Let's get over to Sydney because Nick Maroutsos is founder and managing director of Kapstream Capital. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Well, you know, we've been here before. This is deja vu. You're saying, well, sequels are never really as good as the first and original film.
They really aren't, and I think it's very rare to actually see a movie sequel that turns out to be better than the original, and you're sort of seeing that play out in the markets in the sense that markets are anticipating some large policy response coming out of Europe, and ultimately our belief is that they're probably going to be disappointed at least short term. We've seen this story before in the sense that markets revolt, policymakers respond. Markets are actually disappointed with the policymakers' response, which ultimately forces their hand to implement some sort of bigger response. And we really don't expect to see anything different in this situation, and can't really see the European policymakers come through with some big bazooka plan to fix the problem over the weekend.
Okay, well, what do you think they're going to come out with? I mean, we had a report in a British newspaper yesterday that they'd agreed a €2 trillion fund here. Do you think that was over-egging it?
I'd like to hope that they're going to come out with a $2 trillion program. The problem is the buzzword that we're hearing over the last 24 hours is that of compromise, and the markets unfortunately do not want compromise. The equity markets have been rallying over the past 2 weeks as a result of the markets expecting some big elaborate plan to fix the problem. But again, what's happening is the recent news that the policymakers are going to implement some sort of bank recapitalization plan to the tune of under $100 million, which really will disappoint the markets. And in my view, I think that the policymakers should err on the side of caution and really provide themselves with additional cushion, because let's be honest, their expectations for previous stress tests on the banks haven't been that great, so might as well add a bit more cushion to that number.
Yeah, Nick, I mean, everybody's been really critical of those European bank stress tests, but let's not dwell on that. Let's just dwell at the heart of the problem here. Greece and what it has to do next. Another austerity plan is in the works here, and, well, and the nation's shutting down effectively.
It is. You are seeing some of the citizens revolt as a result of the austerity plan. And to be fair, they actually don't want to implement these tax measures across the country, but unfortunately they're needed to. In order to sort of regain some composure within the country and actually sort of get things back on a proper footing so that they can grow at a later stage, they're going to have to take the pain now and take their medicine now. When you look at the market as an overall, the European scenario as an overall, a Greek restructure as well as a bank recapitalization plan, a $2 trillion package is not enough. What they're going to need to do, that basically buys them time. It may contain the crisis. It certainly doesn't fix the problem, because you have countries like Italy and Spain who have huge amounts of debt to roll in 2012 and 2013, and God forbid France gets brought into the mix as a result of a downgrade or being put under pressure. It's really going to force the policymakers' hand to actually implement some big plan.
Well, what's your view, and what is being priced in right now with the equity markets and where they are?
As of 24 hours ago, the market was expecting the big bazooka plan to come through. But unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. And this news reports that we're actually hearing of late is that they're sort of coming off the plan of the $2 trillion program. So we are going to see some sort of policy response announced. But I believe that it will probably be equities negative for the market over the weekend. Ultimately, I think policymakers will respond properly, and it's typical European fashion that they don't necessarily respond with big policy response until death is really knocking at the door. So it may be a couple weeks before we see another plan that's implemented or some revisions towards the plans that are formally announced.
Yeah, Nick, I mean, behind the scenes, I was talking to one economist who remains nameless, but saying that what's really going on behind the scenes right now is, not just the size of this bailout, but also it's not a question of how, if they do, but by how much do the Greeks, well, how can I say, default on their debt?
That's true. I mean, if you look at the big picture, Greece is really in default. I mean, they're not actually borrowing from the market. They're using the European Union to actually help finance their debt. So in reality, they are in default. So it's not a matter of actually when you know, if they default, it's a matter of when. So it's really a matter of how much haircut they're actually going to take on their debt. Our expectations are that that haircut's going to have to be high in order for them to sort of, you know, rebound from this problem and actually regain some footing. Ultimately, that's going to lead to bigger problems, because next in the firing line will be Portugal, then Ireland, then Spain, Italy, potentially France. The list goes on and on. So, you know, it's crunch time certainly for European policymakers to actually do something worthwhile.
But at the heart of this also is surely what one German minister was saying just the other day, is we need to come up with a solution, and a solution which allows us to win the next election still, or retain our majority.
Right. Unfortunately, those two points don't really jive well together. I don't think you can come up with a solution that fixes the problem as well as saves the election for the German elected officials. I think it's really a matter of give and take, whether they're going to have to choose whether or not they want to save the sovereign entities as a whole, or just save their banking sector entirely and potentially save their seat from a political point of view.
Nick, great to see you as ever. Nick Maroutsos there, joining us from Kapstream Capital.